I found it in the attic, wedged between old Christmas decorations and moth-eaten sweaters, a leather-bound photo album I had never seen before. The cover was pristine, unlike the surrounding dusty boxes, which meant someone had been up here recently, handling it, cherishing it. I hesitated before opening it, but curiosity won. The first page hit me like a punch to the gut. Olivia's high school graduation, perfect sister, perfect smile, perfect valedictorian speech, preserved in glossy 4x6 prints. Mom's handwriting was neatly scrawled beneath each photo, documenting every achievement with religious devotion. My stomach twisted as I turned the page. More photos. Olivia's first dance recital, Ava's first art show, Olivia's wedding, both of their college graduations, their pregnancies, every milestone, every triumph meticulously cataloged. I flipped faster, searching, my fingers trembling, page after page, picture after picture, nothing about me. Find something interesting? I nearly jumped, slamming the album shut as dust particles danced in the attic's dim light. Grandma Eleanor stood at the top of the stairs, her sharp eyes scanning me with knowing amusement. "Just some old photos," I muttered, trying to shove the album back where I found it. "Ah," Grandma said, stepping closer. "Margaret's shrine to success." Her voice carried that slight sting of vinegar it always did when talking about my mother's obsession with appearances. "Go ahead, look through it," she added. "Sometimes the truth hurts, but it hurts less than pretending." I swallowed hard and reopened the album. This time I studied each page with a new awareness. Olivia's achievements, Ava's milestones, nothing of me. "Notice anything missing?" Grandma asked quietly. The word caught in my throat. 17 years of me, she sighed, her voice soft but firm. "Your dance recital, your honor roll certificates, that beautiful photograph from last spring's school play where you stole the whole damn show." My throat tightened. "Maybe there's another album," I said weakly. Grandma shook her head. "Oh, sweetheart, you know there isn't." I stared at the album, my fingers tracing the edge of a photo, Olivia's first debate team trophy. All these years I had been invisible, always in the background. I was the reliable one, the helper, the afterthought. This album just confirmed it. "They're all coming tomorrow, aren't they?" Grandma continued. "Family dinner to celebrate Ava's pregnancy, again. Let me guess. They'll need you to watch Olivia's kids while they drink wine and reminisce?" "Like always," I muttered bitterly. Grandma let out a sharp laugh. "There's a difference between being helpful and being taken for granted. Your sisters learned early how to be the stars. Maybe it's time you learned how to say no." I swallowed, glancing at her. "Mom would lose it." "Maybe she needs to," Grandma said simply. The album felt heavier in my hands. The weight of years of neglect pressed into my chest. But for the first time, I saw it for what it was. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was deliberate. I inhaled deeply. "I got accepted to that art school in New York," I said quietly. "Full scholarship." Grandma's eyes lit up. "Now that's the kind of news that belongs in an album." I let out a bitter laugh. "Mom wants me to go to the States. She already talked to Olivia about getting me an internship at her company." Grandma tilted her head. "And what do you want?" The question hung in the air, catching the dust motes in the attic's afternoon light. Below, I could hear Mom in the kitchen, probably planning tomorrow's dinner. Probably already counting on me to handle the kids, the cleanup, the little tasks that made everyone else's lives easier. I exhaled, steadying my voice. "I want my own damn page in the album." Grandma smiled, slow and knowing. "Then I suggest you start taking some pictures worth saving." I tucked the album back in its hiding spot, but something had shifted inside me. Tomorrow they'd all be here, expecting the same old me. The reliable one, the quiet one, the invisible one. They had no idea I had just found the perfect reason to rewrite the story. The next evening, I descended the stairs as the first guests arrived. The family dinner began exactly as I had predicted. Olivia barely said hello before dumping her 4-year-old twins, Emma and Ethan, into my lap. "Just watch them for a minute, Maddie," she said, already walking toward the kitchen, her designer purse swinging at her side. "Mom needs help with the roast." I stared at her, retreating back. Just watch them, like I always did, like I was supposed to. Across the room, Grandma caught my eye and raised an eyebrow, a silent reminder of our attic conversation. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to stand, displacing the twins. "Actually," I said, "I need to finish my art portfolio. College applications are due soon." The words came out steadier than I felt, but I didn't let my voice waver. Olivia froze mid-stride. "What? Since when are you applying to art school?" "Since I decided I wanted to." Confusion flickered across her face. "But Mom said you're coming to work with me after graduation. We already discussed." "You discussed," I cut in. "I wasn't there, remember?" The twins, sensing the tension, went quiet. In the kitchen, I could hear Mom and Ava chattering about baby names. Dad was probably in his workshop, avoiding everything as usual. Olivia's voice dropped into that condescending tone she used with her kids. "Don't be difficult, Maddie. This is a great opportunity. Do you know how many people would kill for an internship at my firm?" "Then give it to one of them," I said flatly. Her perfectly plucked eyebrows drew together. "What's gotten into you?" "Nothing." I turned for the stairs. "I just have work to do." Behind me, Olivia's voice rang out, "Mom, Maddie's being impossible." And there it was, the default response, the scripted role I was expected to play, the obedient youngest, the peacekeeper, the quiet shadow. Mom appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. "Madeline," she said, her tone already edged with disappointment. "Your sister needs help with the twins. Your portfolio can wait." "Can it?" I turned to face them both. Like my dance recital waited while we attended Olivia's business dinner? Or my art show waited while we celebrated Ava's gallery opening? Mom's face flushed. Olivia looked confused. In the sudden silence, I heard Grandma Edith's slow footsteps approaching. Mom's voice wavered. "That's not fair." "Show me the pictures," I interrupted, her brow furrowed. "What pictures?" "The ones you took at my events, the ones you saved in that fancy album upstairs?" I met her gaze, unflinching. "Show me just one." Silence. Olivia scoffed. "Don't be dramatic. Of course you're in it." "When was my last dance recital, Olivia? What role did I play in the spring musical? Name one thing about my life that doesn't involve babysitting your kids." She opened her mouth, closed it. The twins had retreated to the corner, unusually quiet, and for the first time in my life, my perfect sister had no answer. The silence in the room stretched, thick and suffocating. Olivia's stunned expression mirrored Mom's, both of them caught off guard. I had never spoken back like this before. Never demanded acknowledgement, never refused to play my assigned role. From the doorway, Grandma Edith watched with quiet approval, arms crossed, as if she had been waiting for this moment for years. Mom recovered first. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice tight. "The album in the attic," I said, forcing myself to hold her gaze. "The one with all the family memories, except I'm not in it. Not once." Mom's lips parted, but no words came. Olivia scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, come on, Maddie. Don't be dramatic. Of course you're in." "When was my last dance recital, Olivia?" I cut in, voice sharp. "What role did I play in the spring musical? Name one thing about my life that doesn't involve babysitting your kids." She opened her mouth, closed it. I watched her struggle, trying to summon a single detail about my life that didn't revolve around being their afterthought. She couldn't. The twins, sensing the shift in energy, clung to each other in the corner. The entire room felt frozen in time, waiting for someone to break the silence. It was Grandma who finally spoke, her voice calm but unyielding. I think it's time we all sat down for a real conversation. Mom bristled. There's nothing to discuss. Her voice was sharper now, defensive. Maddie's just being sensitive, and we have dinner to prepare. The roast can burn, Grandma said flatly. This matters more. Ava wandered in, one hand resting on her pregnant belly. What's going on? Your sister's having a tantrum, Olivia supplied. I turned to her, my voice unwavering. No, I'm having a revelation. There's a difference. I pulled out my phone, opened my email, and took a deep breath. Full scholarship to the New York Academy of Arts, I read aloud. Starting this fall. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom was the first to react. New York? She whispered. But that's far away, independent, not part of the plan. Your plan, I corrected, slipping my phone back into my pocket. Not mine. Olivia's face twisted in disbelief. You can't possibly be serious. You're 17. You need... What I need, I cut in, is to be seen, actually seen. Not just used as convenient childcare or a background decoration in your perfect lives. Mom's face darkened. Maddie, you're being selfish. Grandma held up a hand, silencing her. Let her finish. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I'm finishing my portfolio tonight, and tomorrow I'm taking pictures of my own achievements, starting my own album. I met each of their eyes in turn. You're all welcome to be in it, but only if you're actually there. And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving them in stunned silence. In my room, I threw myself onto my desk chair, opening my laptop. My hands shook as I scrolled through my digital sketches, selecting the best ones for my application. Downstairs, muffled voices rose and fell, Mom's sharp tone, Olivia's frustration, Ava's attempts to mediate, Grandma's unwavering firmness. For the first time in years, I wasn't downstairs making peace. I was up here making art, making choices, making waves, and it felt right. 3 days passed, 3 days of cold silence from Mom, 3 days of Olivia's passive-aggressive texts, 3 days of avoiding family meals. By the third day, I needed air. So I went to Grandma's house. Her place always smelled like lavender and old books. As I sat at her kitchen table, she placed a steaming cup of tea in front of me and settled into the chair across from me. Your mother called, she said. Twice. I sighed. Let me guess. Am I being unreasonable? Grandma smirked. Actually, she wanted to know if I'd talk some sense into you. About New York? No. She took a slow sip of tea. About the money. I frowned. What money? She reached for an envelope on the side table and slid it toward me. The college fund I've been building since the day you were born. My breath caught in my throat. Wait, you've been saving for my college? Grandma's eyes twinkled. Someone had to. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was a bank statement with a balance that made my chest tighten. Mom just found out about this, Grandma continued. And let's just say, she's not thrilled. She thought you'd need their money, that they could use it to keep you here. But now she knows you don't. I swallowed hard. This is why Olivia's been blowing up my phone. She thinks she can guilt me into giving up New York because I'll need their money. A knock at the door made us both jump. Through the window, I saw Olivia's sleek black Mercedes in the driveway. Grandma sighed. Speak of the devil. Want me to send her away? I took a deep breath, straightening my spine. No, I need to handle this. Olivia burst in before Grandma even reached the door, her perfect makeup unable to hide the dark circles under her eyes. This is completely inappropriate, she announced, tossing her designer bag onto the counter. Using Grandma like this, manipulating her. Grandma's voice could have frozen hell. Child, sit down before you embarrass yourself further. Olivia stiffened but sat. Her leg bounced with nervous energy. Mom's devastated. Dad hasn't come out of his workshop in days, And Ava, her blood pressure is too high, which you'd know if you answered her calls. I exhaled sharply. Don't you dare guilt-trip me about Ava's pregnancy. Not when you're the one who told her I'd be available to help after the baby comes. Because that's what family does, Olivia snapped. No, I said, voice like steel. That's what I do. You and Ava get to have lives, careers, families. I get to be the support system. Olivia's nostrils flared. We supported you plenty. I leaned forward. Name one time. The silence stretched. Grandma quietly sipped her tea. Finally, Olivia sighed. This isn't about support, Maddie. This is about you being selfish, running off to New York, abandoning your family. My hands clenched. Like you abandoned your dreams? The words shot out before I could stop them. Olivia went pale. What are you talking about? You wanted to be a writer, I said, my voice gentler now. You used to tell me stories when I was little, but Mom and Dad thought marketing was more practical, so you gave up. And now you're successful, but miserable, and you can't stand that I'm choosing differently. Her eyes glistened. You don't know anything about my life. I know you cry in your car after family dinners, I said softly. I know you hate your job, but keep pushing for promotions. I know you want me to follow your path because it would validate yours. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm not running away, Olivia. I'm finally choosing me. She looked at me for a long time, then exhaled shakily. Mom's gonna cut you off. She told me to tell you, no car, no phone, no support if you go to New York. I met her gaze unwavering. I don't need it. And for the first time in my life, Olivia looked like she believed me. Olivia sat motionless, her hands clenched in her lap, mascara smudged beneath her eyes. The sister who had always had the perfect answers, the perfect control, was unraveling right in front of me. You're making a mistake, she whispered, but the conviction was gone. It sounded more like a plea than an accusation. I leaned forward, my voice steady. No, I'm making a choice. The difference is I'm finally making it for myself. Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't argue. For once, she had no counter, no justification, no carefully rehearsed speech about practicality and family obligations. Grandma tapped her fingers against her teacup, watching us both closely. It's not too late to change, Olivia, she said. For either of you. Olivia let out a shaky breath. You think it's that easy? She asked, her voice raw. Just deciding to be different? I nodded. No, it's terrifying, but staying the same is worse. Her gaze flickered toward the window, where her expensive car sat in the driveway. I wondered if she was thinking the same thing I was, that it was a cage disguised as a luxury. After a long silence, she wiped her eyes, stood, and grabbed her purse. Mom's calling a family meeting tomorrow night, non-negotiable. I exhaled, unsurprised. Of course she is. She wants you to choose, Maddie, family, or this fantasy. I smiled bitterly. I already chose. They just don't know it yet. Olivia hesitated. I hope you know what you're doing. I tilted my head. I hope you figure it out, too. She left without another word. Grandma took a long sip of her tea, then smirked. About damn time, she muttered. The next evening, I pulled up to my parents' house with Grandma riding shotgun, her expression unreadable. Remember, she said as I parked, you don't owe them your dreams. I nodded, but my heart was pounding. Inside, the house felt like a courtroom. Mom sat in the center, back rigid, hands clasped. Dad was beside her, avoiding eye contact. Olivia and Ava flanked them like loyal soldiers, their expressions grim. And me? The lone defendant. This ends now, Mom said before I even sat down. This rebellion, this nonsense about New York. I folded my arms. It's not nonsense. Olivia pulled out a folder. We found a compromise. Of course they had. You can take art classes at the community college, she continued, while interning at my firm. You'll live at home, save money, keep your future secure. And keep babysitting your kids, I finished. Ava sighed. Don't be difficult. We're trying to help. I let out a humorless laugh. No, you're trying to keep me trapped like you, Mom snapped. That's enough. Your sister is offering you an opportunity like you made her follow yours, I shot back. Olivia stiffened. I made my own choices. Did you? I asked, voice sharp. Then why did I find your old notebooks? The stories you used to write, hidden in Dad's workshop like some shameful secret? The color drained from her face. Dad shifted uncomfortably. This isn't about me, Olivia muttered, but her voice wavered. It's about all of us, I said, my voice shaking but firm. How Mom orchestrates everyone's lives like we're her personal puppet show. How Dad builds furniture instead of courage. How you and Ava gave up your dreams and now you can't stand that I'm fighting for mine. Mom's face twisted in rage. You ungrateful little... Dad touched her arm. Margaret, he said quietly. Let her speak. Mom stood abruptly, her face white with fury. I won't let her destroy this family with her selfishness. I exhaled, the truth burning in my chest. You already destroyed it. Silence. Every time you ignored my achievements. Every time you made Olivia choose security over passion. Every time you called Ava's art a hobby. Mom's hands trembled. I gave you everything, she whispered. Opportunities. Stability. You gave us cages, I corrected. Beautiful, comfortable cages with all the right labels. Perfect daughter, responsible daughter, and me, the spare, just in case the others needed something. The air was suffocating. Then Olivia stood, her corporate mask cracked. If you leave, you're cut off completely. No support, no backup plan. I pulled out my phone. I don't need it. I showed them the email. Full scholarship, grandma's savings. I'm not asking permission anymore, I said. I'm telling you, I'm going. Mom's voice went deadly quiet. If you walk out that door, you are no longer part of this family. The words hit like knives, but I stayed standing. Funny, I murmured. I never really was. Ava gasped, her hand on her stomach. Dad's face fell apart. Margaret, think about what you're saying. But Mom stood firm, tears streaming down her face. Choose, Madeline, your family or your selfishness. I looked at each of them. Mom's rigid anger, Dad's helpless concern, Olivia's cracking facade, Ava's pregnant fear, my family, my cage. I straightened. I choose me. And I turned toward the stairs. Olivia grabbed my arm. Maddie, please, we need you. I gently removed her hand. No, you need someone to blame for your own choices. Find someone else. Mom's voice followed me up the stairs. You'll fail. You'll come crawling back when New York chews you up and spits you out. I stopped at the top step. Maybe, I said. But I'd rather fail at being me than succeed at being your puppet. Upstairs, my room waited. The empty boxes, the half-packed suitcase, the future I was about to claim. But as I reached for the first box, my hands shook. They were right about one thing. I was terrified of failing, of succeeding, of being truly alone for the first time. But more terrifying was the thought of staying, of becoming another Parker family casualty. Through my window, I saw Grandma Edith standing guard beside her car. Below, voices rose and fell, crashing like waves of recrimination. I picked up the first box. Sometimes burning bridges lights the way forward. Time to start packing. Packing up my room felt surreal. Every item I placed into a box was a small rebellion, a tangible step away from the life they had built for me, the life I was refusing to live. My hands trembled as I folded clothes, stacked sketchbooks, and packed the supplies I had secretly collected over the years. Downstairs, the argument raged on, muffled through the walls. Mom's sharp voice, Dad's low, weary responses, Olivia trying to take control, Ava's softer interjections, likely asking them to calm down. But I didn't go downstairs. For once, it wasn't my job to fix it. I sealed the last box, exhaling shakily. It was done. I was done. A knock at my bedroom door. Grandma Edith pushed it open, surveying the room. "You ready?" she asked. I nodded, but my chest was tight. The fear was still there, pressing against my ribs. But beneath it, something else stirred. Excitement. She patted my shoulder. "Let's get these in the car before the wolves start circling." We carried the boxes downstairs, each step solidifying my escape. As we reached the front door, I expected someone to stop me, to beg, to yell, to guilt. Instead, they ambushed me in the driveway. Mom, Dad, Olivia, Ava, lined up like a firing squad, waiting for me to break. Grandma's grip tightened around my wrist. "Remember," she whispered, "you don't owe them your dreams." Mom spoke first, her voice steel-wrapped in cotton. "Family meeting. Now." I held my ground. "I already gave you my answer." "This isn't a request, Madeline." Ava shifted uncomfortably. "Can we at least talk?" "No," I said, my voice calm. "Talking has never been the problem. Listening is." Olivia stepped forward, her arms crossed. "We found a solution that works for everyone." Of course they had. She pulled out another folder, crisp and prepared. "You can take art classes at the community college while interning at my firm," she said, voice smooth. "You'll live at home, save money, keep your future secure." I laughed, shaking my head. "So I can be exactly where you want me? Dependent on you? Stuck here? Babysitting your kids?" Olivia's jaw tightened. "Don't be difficult." "No," I said. "You don't get to frame my choices as difficult just because they don't serve you." Ava looked up, frowning. "Maddie, we're trying to help." "No," I interrupted. "You're trying to keep me in my place." Mom's patience snapped. "That's enough. You're acting like we're the villains, but everything we've done has been for you." I stared at her. "For me? Or for the version of me that made you comfortable?" She flinched, but recovered quickly. "You're throwing away your future on a dream that won't last. And when it falls apart, don't expect us to be here to pick up the pieces." Grandma let out a low chuckle. "Margaret, your parenting methods could use some work. If scaring her into submission was your goal, I'd say you've officially failed." Mom glared. "Stay out of this, Mother." "Why? Because I see the truth?" Grandma's eyes flicked to me. "Because I saw it long before Maddie did?" Ava shifted uncomfortably. "Maddie, please, Mom's right. This is risky." "What if you don't make it?" "Then I fail," I said simply. "And I get back up and try again. But I'd rather fail at something I love than succeed at being miserable." Silence. Olivia's hands clenched. "You're not being realistic." I met her gaze. "And you're not being honest. You had dreams once too, Olivia, but you gave them up. And now you can't stand that I won't." Her face was drained of color. "This isn't about me," she muttered. "Isn't it?" I tilted my head. "Why does my leaving threaten you so much?" She didn't answer. Mom exhaled slowly, regaining her composure. "Madeline, if you walk out that door, you are no longer part of this family." Dad finally spoke, his voice strained. "Margaret, don't—" Mom cut him off. "Choose us, or your selfishness." My breath caught, but I forced myself to stand tall. I looked at them, at the cage they had built for me, and then I made my choice. I choose me. I turned, stepping toward the car. Olivia grabbed my wrist. "Maddie, please, we need you." I gently pulled away. "No, you need someone to validate your choices. You need someone to carry the weight so you don't have to face your own regrets." Mom's voice was sharp as a knife. "You'll come crawling back when New York spits you out." I stopped at the car door, looking at her one last time. "Maybe," I admitted. But I'd rather fail at being me than succeed at being what you want. And with that, I got into the car. Grandma started the engine. As we pulled away, I saw Dad standing in the doorway, watching. Mom sat on the porch crying, but she didn't call after me. Ava looked away, her hand on her belly, and Olivia, she just stood there, her corporate mask slipping, revealing the girl she used to be, the girl who had stories to tell but had buried them beneath practicality. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Grandma and I drove in silence. It wasn't until we reached her house that she finally spoke. That took guts, kid. I let out a shaky breath. I'm terrified, she grinned. Good. That means you're doing it right. The next morning, I booked my one-way ticket to New York. I expected more calls, more pleading, more attempts to make me stay. Instead, silence. Mom didn't call. Olivia didn't text. Dad didn't reach out. The only message came from Ava. We need to talk. Ava's apartment was a mess. Paint-streaked canvases leaned against the walls. Parenting books were stacked haphazardly. It looked like a collision of dreams and reality. She sat on the couch, one hand on her swollen belly, the other gripping a mug of tea. "You're killing Mom," she said without preamble. I snorted. "Funny. She's doing the same to me." "This isn't a joke, Maddie. Her blood pressure is through the roof. Dad's talking about therapy. And Olivia..." She hesitated. "What about her?" I asked. She found one of her old notebooks. I froze. "And?" Ava looked away. "She's writing again." Something tight in my chest loosened. Just a little. "So why am I here?" I asked. "Because..." Ava hesitated, looking at her own half-finished paintings. "Because I think I hate you for leaving, and I think I hate myself more for staying." I sat down beside her. "Then come with me." She flinched. "I can't. The baby... Mom, I took her hands. "Ava, be honest. What do you want?" She swallowed hard, tears brimming in her eyes. "I want..." The words caught in her throat. "I want my own damn page in the album." I squeezed her hands. "Then take it." She let out a shaky laugh, wiping her tears. "I don't know how." I smiled. "Start by painting something you don't need to hide." Ava's gaze flickered to an unfinished canvas, and for the first time, I saw it, a door opening for her too. Tomorrow, I leave for New York, and for the first time, I'm not looking back. The night before my flight, I lay awake in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling. The room felt smaller, suffocating, as if the walls knew I was leaving and were closing in one last time, trying to keep me here. But it was too late. I had already let go. The next morning, Grandma Edith and I loaded the last of my bags into her car. As we were about to pull out of the driveway, my phone buzzed. A text from Dad. "Your mother's called a family meeting. Tomorrow night. Non-negotiable." I stared at the screen. Then, without hesitation, I replied, "No." Grandma glanced at me. That was satisfying, wasn't it? I let out a slow breath. More than I expected. As we pulled away, the house grew smaller in the rear-view mirror. I didn't look back. By the time we got to Grandma's, Olivia was waiting in the driveway. Her Mercedes was parked at an angle, as if she had arrived in a hurry. She stood with her arms crossed, a manila envelope in hand. "One last chance," she announced as I stepped out of the car. "Before you throw everything away." I sighed. "Move your car, Olivia. Not until you see this." She thrust the envelope toward me. "Your college fund," she said. "The one Mom and Dad started when you were born. Nearly enough for 4 years at state." I didn't take it. "You mean your leverage?" I said flatly. Her jaw tightened. "I mean your future. A practical future, with family support. And strings. That's what family is, Maddie. We support each other. We compromise." I let out a humorless laugh. "No, Olivia, family isn't compromise. It's sacrifice. And it only ever goes one way. She flinched. You want to talk about sacrifice? Fine. Her voice sharpened. Who paid for your art supplies? Your dance classes? My babysitting services? I interrupted. My constant availability? My dreams that got pushed aside for everyone else's convenience? Her nostrils flared. That's not... Did you know Dad kept my drawings? I asked suddenly. She hesitated. What? Every single one. Hidden in his workshop, like evidence of a crime. Her grip on the envelope tightened. What are you talking about? The same place he kept your stories, Olivia. The ones Mom said weren't practical enough. She staggered as if I had struck her. Stop it, she whispered. Why? I asked, stepping closer. Because it's easier to bribe me than to face your own buried dreams? Her corporate mask cracked. I made my choices. No, Mom made them. You just surrendered. Her breath hitched. Then, before she could stop herself, she threw the envelope at my feet, papers scattered across the driveway. You ungrateful little... Enough. Grandma's voice sliced through the air like a whip. She stepped out of the car, something clutched in her hands. Show her, Madeline. I pulled out my phone, opened the email, turned the screen toward Olivia. Full scholarship, I said, plus a stipend for supplies. Then I nodded at Grandma. She held up a bank book. I've been saving for her since she was born, Grandma said. A separate account, one your mother never knew about. Olivia's face crumpled. You planned this, she whispered. All of it? No. I shook my head. I just refused to let my dreams become another Parker family casualty. She looked at the papers scattered on the ground, her last attempt at control blowing away in the wind. Her voice was barely audible. You'll fail. I met her gaze. Maybe, but at least I'll fail on my terms. She swallowed hard, blinking rapidly. You'll end up alone. I tilted my head. I already am. The difference is now I'm alone on my terms. A movement caught my eye. Dad stood in the doorway, watching. Behind him, Mom sat on the stairs, head in her hands. Ava was nowhere to be seen. Move your car, Olivia, I said again. Her shoulders slumped. Or what? Or watch me leave anyway. Without the perfect goodbye, you're trying to script. Something in her expression shattered. Her perfect mask slipped, revealing the girl she used to be. The one who used to tell me stories at night. The one who had dreams before they were rewritten by someone else's expectations. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out her keys. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I used to write about girls like you, she murmured. Brave ones, free ones. I studied her. Before Mom convinced you it was childish? She nodded, tears tracking through her makeup. I hesitated. It's not too late, Olivia. Start writing again. Her throat bobbed. It is for me. She dug into her bag, found her keys, and moved her car. As I stepped toward Grandma's car, Dad finally spoke. Madeline. I turned, his gaze flickered toward the workshop. I know. I nodded. You should have fought for us. I know. He reached into his pocket and handed me something, a small wooden box. I opened it. Inside was my first crayon drawing, carefully preserved. For your new studio, he said quietly. I swallowed hard. Thank you. Behind us, Mom's sobs echoed from the house, but she didn't come outside. I hugged Dad briefly, nodded at Olivia, then got into the car. Grandma started the engine. As we pulled away, Olivia stood frozen beside her car, her expression unreadable. Dad remained in the doorway, watching. Mom never looked up. I turned my head forward. I had a flight to catch. 2 days later, I was in New York. My first day at the academy, I unpacked my supplies, setting up my tiny studio space. As I unzipped a portfolio case, a small envelope slipped out. No sender, no return address. I opened it, heart pounding. Inside was a printed short story. Byline, L. Parker. I froze. Olivia. I read the first line. Once upon a time, there was a girl who refused to stay in the cage she was given. Tears burned my eyes. Maybe I hadn't left her behind after all. Maybe, just maybe, she was finally finding her way out too. I reached for my sketchbook, and I started to draw. Because this story wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot, story 2. My spouse was on vacation with my sister and parents, but he claimed to be on a work trip. Through my sister's hidden social media account, I learnt about it. I looked at my airline account. They exploited my hard-earned miles, I found out. At the airport, I left the home without saying anything. The parents and sister of my spouse were incensed. Greenwich's morning started as peacefully as usual. The sun was shining through the huge windows as Catherine Morrison prepared Sunday breakfast. Whole foods. French toast scented with maple syrup, organic yogurt topped with seasonal berries, and freshly ground, fragrant coffee were among the meticulously chosen fresh items used to set the table. During their 10 years of marriage, this practice had not altered. David. The coffee is ready. Her husband David walked down the stairs to answer her call. Even yet, he had the great burden of being Harrison and Global's marketing director. He always made time for his family on Sundays. That's how it seemed anyhow. Wearing a cashmere jumper from Brooks Brothers, he was the perfect example of a prosperous businessman. Thank you, Kat. After giving her a cheek kiss, he sat down outside the window as usual. Morning mist covered the cityscape of Greenwich. Their weekly family supper was held today. After the ceremony at First Presbyterian Church, her sister April would meet up with their parents in the evening. From appetizers to desserts, the family had long gathered around Catherine's home-cooked feast. The family had always enjoyed her dedication to creating everything from scratch. With 500,000 followers, April had achieved success as an influencer. Her fans were envious of her Instagram photos, which showcased her opulent lifestyle in a lavish apartment in Manhattan. The newest Gucci collections, Cartier jewelry, and Hermes Birkin purses. She always posted at the forefront of fashion. As active members of First Presbyterian Church and frequent attendees of the Greenwich Country Club, their parents, George and Mary Parker, were well known in Greenwich. They hosted neighborhood charity activities and had a lot of social impact. Mary was an important member of the Church Women's Association, and George's powerful baritone was heard in the Sunday choir. The well-kept lawn of the Parker family estate, which was located in a posh neighborhood, preserved historic New England customs. Mary's well-kept roses blossomed with pride. Children from the neighborhood would come visit on holidays, anticipating the handmade cookies cooked by my grandma. Catherine was a brilliant consultant who worked as a senior partner at an accounting consulting business, making over $300,000 a year. She volunteered at the church's Sunday school while juggling a prosperous profession and a contented family life. She was regarded as the ideal lady who consistently lived up to standards at home and at work. As the perfect family, they sparked jealousy on social media with pictures of their loving family dinners and European holidays. Numerous priceless experiences from family vacations to Paris, wine tastings in Tuscany, and ski vacations in the Alps were captured on Catherine's Instagram. Both church communities and charitable gatherings praised the relationship between the Morrison and Parker families. "Pork roast per vessel is tonight's meal," Catherine told her husband. "April's favorite. I also chose a good wine yesterday." David nodded and grinned. "You always make the finest food." David went straight to his studies after breakfast. As she started to make dinner, Catherine saw his departing back. Around the end of April, the changes started. David's return time became more and farther away. In the Asia-Pacific area, the term "new project" started to appear often in dinner talks. Late at night, Catherine frequently saw her husband in his study, carefully reviewing his emails. When she questioned, "Are you all right?" His profile, lit by the dim monitor light, displayed signs of what appeared to be anxiousness. "Oh, it's simply the time zone difference," was the only answer. Recently, people have stopped hearing the phrase, "You should get some rest, too," which used to be the standard response. But other changes were also happening slowly. David's right wrist was adorned with a brand new Patek Philippe, which he described as a thank you gift from a customer. Catherine was aware that her husband had little interest in expensive Swiss timepieces. The watch appeared to fit the wrist of someone else completely. Younger, more stylish suits that were very different from his typical Brooks Brothers look started to fill the wardrobe. He had never before given companies like Dior, Tom Ford, and Saint Laurent a second look. David stopped playing golf on the weekends, started going to the gym, and started consuming protein drinks. "All I'm trying to do is improve my health." As he stated this, Catherine had a strange feeling about her husband's profile. On the neck of his shirt, it looked like foundation. April started acting strangely at the same time. Weekly family dinners were more frequently abruptly canceled. "I have an urgent influencer meeting or a significant brand event." Excuses like this would be sent by SMS. On the other hand, the same days frequently saw no new posts on social media. It was evident that she was posting less frequently on social media. Posts of peaceful moments spent at her parents' house became more common rather than images from glitzy parties or selfies in the newest styles. They all appeared to have relatively manufactured atmospheres. Recently, Mom and Dad have been feeling unwell. "I'd want to stay at home more." During weekend visits, April's eyes appeared to stray a little from Catherine's as she said these words. Their parents looked healthy as ever. They appeared more animated than normal, if anything. Records of far more costly transactions than previously were visible on credit card accounts. Hermes, Cartier, Tiffany. Every time Catherine saw these brand names, she couldn't help but wonder how much money their parents were giving April to maintain her way of life. It was obvious that her sister's influence on Instagram was starting to decline. To exacerbate the situation, April's attendance at church decreased. She was no longer present at charity functions or Sunday services. Despite their parents' excuses that she was busy at work, there was an unusual urgency in their voices. Then the pivotal moment arrived. In Hawaii, she is starting a new project. A 2-week business trip was announced by David. Her husband, who rarely packed, had bought a brand new suitcase specifically for the trip. This time, a brand new Louis Vuitton model. As though he were going to a posh resort in Hawaii, he had even stuffed a gaudy Aloha shirt inside the suitcase. "I will return shortly, so don't worry." As her husband said goodbye, Catherine couldn't help but feel that something wasn't quite right about his unusually polite tone. His demeanor was almost guilty. There was even a little spring to his footsteps on the doormat. On that day, April sent a message. "I'll be busy for a while. There's a new business opportunity. Mom and Dad are going to help too." Catherine read the message over and over. Then she decided to thoroughly check her sister's social media accounts, something she never usually did. Her husband's business trip announcement, her sister's sudden busyness, and their parents' involvement. These were beginning to connect in an ominous way. The discovery of the backup account was accidental, a private account with few followers and modest posts. However, the photos posted there froze Catherine's heart. Family photos at a luxury resort in Waikiki, breakfast scenes at the Moana Surf Reader, lavish dinners at La Mer, David and her parents smiling happily, and April's figure. Her sister was clinging to Catherine's husband like a lover with trembling hands. She opened the airline mileage confirmation screen. First-class airline tickets for 4 people accumulated over many years, Hawaii flight reservation records, luxury hotel confirmation emails. Everything had been paid for from her account. The betrayal had even fed on her assets. Catherine turned off the computer outside the window. Dusk was approaching. She stood up and quietly walked to the closet. Taking out a suitcase, she began packing the bare essentials. One suit, identification documents, and the collection of evidence she had gathered over the years. Her expression no longer showed any trace of agitation, only quiet determination remained. She opened the airline app and made a reservation time to match their return flight. The revenge had to be perfect. "I'll be the one to welcome you home," Catherine whispered softly in the darkened room. Manhattan's high-rise district. Catherine's figure was reflected in the glass-walled office. "Mrs. Morrison, we've been expecting you." James Sterling, one of the nation's top divorce attorneys, greeted her in the top-floor reception room. The New York skyline spread out beyond the windows. "Could you tell me more about your case?" Catherine carefully took out the evidence she had prepared. One piece at a time: USB drives, printed photographs, flight reservation records, and credit card statements. Impressive evidence collection. Sterling reviewed the materials with admiration. The social media records in particular are perfect. "For the first time in our 10-year marriage, I suspected my husband's betrayal." Catherine's voice maintained its composure. "But I never imagined my sister and parents would be involved." Sterling nodded quietly. "Let's start by protecting your assets." From that day, meticulous legal preparations began. The first step was strengthening control over bank accounts, moving funds from joint accounts, and opening new individual accounts. Investment assets were also moved beyond her husband's reach. Confirming property rights was also urgent. The Greenwich home was inherited from Catherine's paternal grandfather. It could be claimed as premarital property with full ownership rights. "Prepare to freeze all credit cards," Sterling instructed. But let's wait until the last moment for timing. Evidence collection continued even more thoroughly. IT specialists were hired to preserve digital evidence, social media posts, email exchanges, location records. Everything was saved in a form that couldn't be tampered with. Here's material obtained from Harrison and Global's accounting department. Sterling's assistant brought in a new file. "We found serious irregularities in David Morrison's expense claims, fictitious business trip expenses, inflated entertainment costs, and personal shopping processed as expenses. The amounts ran into 6 figures. We've also obtained April Parker's financial records. The IT specialist reported over $5 million in debt confirmed in the past 6 months, seems to be due to drastically reduced income following declining social media influence." Catherine checked her sister's social media accounts again. Follower numbers showed a sharp declining trend, and sponsor contract renewals were in jeopardy. Contracts with luxury brands were quietly being terminated. "I'm concerned about our parents' financial position too," Catherine gently replied. The investigative conclusions were even more surprising. The Greenwich home already had hefty liens imposed on it. Country club membership payments were 3 months in overdue. Church contributions have lately halted. "Perfect planning involves allies," Sterling added. "The initial interaction was with Harrison and worldwide CEO Mrs. Morrison." "I understand the predicament," CEO Thomas Hamilton remarked with a concerned attitude. "David Morrison's activities represent a big compliance concern for our organization." Next was HR Director Janet Smith. "His advancement will be halted immediately. We're also preparing the disciplinary committee. Key clients in the Asia-Pacific area were also quietly advised of the issue. Many of them trusted Catherine's ability as an accounting consultant. Careful attention was also paid to communication with April's contacts. A spokesman for a premium company said, "This is a problem that affects our brand image. We're ready to end the deal already." The director of the advertising firm concurred. "You can no longer rely on her influence." We were anticipating something new. Silent reverberations also swept across the church community. The priest added regretfully, "Mr. and Mrs. Parker's actions go against our values. The church committee is ready to take the necessary action. Lastly, getting ready for the media's reaction. We don't want spectacular coverage, though." Sterling gave thoughtful advice. "Yes, I do understand," Catherine said gently, "but there has to be clear societal consequences. Photographs of certain pieces of evidence were made for reporters from the local media as the strongest punishment for families that cherish their position in higher society, and the finishing touch. At the airport, careful preparations were made for the clash, coordinating the positioning of security monitors, proper placement of all parties concerned. Everything went according to plan. Sterling made the final confirmation 72 hours before to the planned arrival time. "Are you certain about this approach, madam?" Catherine looked out the window and replied, "Indeed. This is the way to repay treachery." The last preparations went underway amid the darkness of Manhattan. Arriving at the airport, Lobby Catherine had a bouquet of rich red flowers and flawless cosmetics while wearing a spotless white Alexander McQueen outfit. She had brought the same type to her wedding a decade prior. The arrival foyer on the left was already packed with passengers. Thomas Hamilton, the CEO of Global, stood next to Harrison, his arms folded, his face grim. James Walker, the director of sales, had a private conversation with 3 significant Asia-Pacific clients. HR. Director Janet Smith was standing next to them. Documents for disciplinary dismissal were in her hands. The Chanel brand representative is contacted via April's job on the right. Keep a chilly eye on the entry gate. Gucci and Hermes executives were standing next to them. They were holding notices of contract termination. On his smartphone, the creative director of the advertising firm was already looking at pictures of the upcoming campaign model. Pastor Jonathan Williams of the First Presbyterian Church Representatives was in the middle back, looking dejected. Members of the church committee also sighed heavily as they recited prayers, and members of the Greenwich Country Club. The agony of having to see this day was evident in the emotions of these longtime acquaintances. Large displays in the arrival lobby showed flight information. Catherine checked one last time. As he discreetly said that all preparations were finished, Attorney James Sterling went over the paperwork. An announcement sounded as the clock struck 4 o'clock. "Hall 382 will be there soon." Catherine inhaled deeply and further straightened her back. After 15 minutes, passengers started to arrive as the automated doors opened. April was carrying a brand new Hermes Birkin when her voice could be heard. The vacation was just amazing. The voice of Mary Parker. She carried shopping bags of high-end brands in both hands. "Next month, I hope we can go again." George Parker pulled a golf bag and followed. "Indeed. Next time, let's think about a different resort." A brand new Patek Philippe sparkled on David's wrist as he spoke. The 4 of them smiled broadly as they proceeded. Then all of a sudden, their faces went blank. Catherine came over with the flowers. "Welcome back, everyone." Her tone sounded strangely serene. David's face drained of blood. April held her Birkin close to her heart. Her parents were stunned. Catherine looked at the monitor slowly. The big screen sprang to life. Let's begin with the timeline. The first video started playing from the Christmas celebration the previous year. April and David meet in private, out of sight. December. Catherine's voice sounded icy as I was running late for work. Then came footage from a high-end hotel's security cameras, pictures of the two arriving at various times. Scenes from the eateries where they met. Everything was well documented. "I've heard that you owe $5 million, April." Catherine's gaze shifted to her sister. "Did you approach him for that reason? In a desperate situation? Because the contracts you had with your brands were set to expire." The monitor showed a graph of rapidly decreasing follower numbers, emails illustrating the problem of contract renewals, several payment default notifications, and evidentiary documentation proving April's indebtedness. April's face became white. Catherine looked at her spouse. "Did the promotion battle put a lot of strain on you? A midlife crisis looking for young people?" Documents from personnel evaluations and internal correspondence were now visible. Proof that costs were used fraudulently, fake records of business travel, remarks with exaggerated entertaining costs. With the biggest betrayers, David stumbled and leaned against the wall. Catherine turned to her parents. "You helped their affair, but why? Did you plan on ruining my life so far?" Thomas Hamilton, the CEO, came forward. "I declare you fired, David Morrison." The clients in the Asia-Pacific area came next. All contracts will be immediately terminated. Documents were brought forward by the HR director. Disciplinary termination. No benefits for retirement. The brand ambassadors then looked at April. "The contract is being terminated as of right now. Engagement in the future is totally impossible. No chance of image recovery exists." Sadly, the priest told the parents, the church committee has already voted to expel him. Members of the country club went on to unanimously endorse the withdrawal suggestion. There were also icy remarks from the charity committee. Every hosting privilege will be terminated. All four faces were absolutely devoid of blood. David fell to the ground. April started weeping, and her parents were left speechless. In order to document the pivotal moment of the upper-class controversy, local media photographers fired their flashes simultaneously. Catherine dropped the bouquet slowly for the morning newspaper tomorrow. As the hem of her white suit flowed gracefully, deep crimson flowers were strewn across the airport floor. "The cost of betraying me is this." Catherine made a graceful exit. Only the broken remains of a destroyed family and rose petals strewn all over the floor remained behind her. A year later, Catherine looked out from her 57th floor workplace at the 2024 Outstanding Accountant Award plaque on her workstations. It described the course of her new life, which started on that day at the airport. David fell with great force. Following his disciplinary termination from Global and Harrison, he was unable to get new work. As a result of the industry's exposure to his false expense claims, no business dared to hire him. He was forced to give up his opulent Manhattan apartment and pay hefty alimony. According to rumors, Mr. David Morrison, her secretary, is currently living in an old Bronx flat and making ends meet as a temporary employee. Catherine shook her head silently when she was asked. "He has lost all significance in my life." April's demise was just as bad. Her social media following fell below 100,000, and her impact virtually disappeared. Rumor has it that she moved from her opulent Manhattan apartment to a shared house in Brooklyn after luxury brand contracts were repeatedly terminated and no new sponsors emerged. Her once glitzy way of life had fallen apart entirely. Miss April wants to make amends. Catherine calmly responded that it wasn't necessary when the lawyer called her. Even worse was what happened to her parents. Expulsion from the congregation. Total alienation from social networks. They were also compelled to stop participating in charitable events. To pay off debts, the Greenwich mansion was sold. According to reports, they currently reside in a small Connecticut town on a meager pension. The secretary told her that your mother had sent a letter. In silence, Catherine took the papers and ran them through the shredder. But Catherine's own life had become even more brilliant. She relocated to Manhattan's Upper East Side following the airport incident. When she started a new accounting consulting business, her knowledge was even more well-regarded. The most reputable accounting firm on Wall Street was Parker Consulting. Additionally, she made a strong impression at Central Park Church with her new community involvement, scholarship, assistance for kids, contributions to groups that safeguard the environment. Her new lifestyle was evident in everything. "Are you interested in writing a book about that experience?" She refused the publisher's offer courteously. The past should be left in the past. On vacation, she likes to spend peaceful time at the Metropolitan Museum of Art and jog in Central Park. She occasionally attends a Broadway production. Most importantly, she was at peace again. "Are you content?" when a close buddy asks. Catherine smiled tenderly. In the fullest sense of the word, maybe for the first time. The timetable for the upcoming month was written on her desk calendar. A trip to Milan, and the launch of the London Branch International Accounting Symposium in Paris. The board meeting is about to begin, Miss Parker. Catherine rose elegantly outside the window at the summons of her secretary. Twilight colors were being used to paint Manhattan. One by one, the lights of the towers were coming on. In their different locations, the former traitors were wallowing in their sorrows. For Catherine, however, the great act of life was only getting started. Kindly get the new project's materials ready. The shadows of the past were gone from her back as she strode quickly into the meeting room. The full moon glistened with city lights as it drifted into the night sky of Manhattan. It sounded like the start of a new tale. Catherine Parker would travel towards greater heights tomorrow, this time without worrying about treachery. Story 3. In order for me to miss our Hawaii vacation, my parents misled me about the day and time of our flight. "Where are you guys?" I inquired, arriving at the airport. "We are in Honolulu," my mom dared to ask. "Sweetheart, why didn't you visit the airport yesterday? I couldn't believe it when they returned. We're in Honolulu." "Sweetheart, why didn't you visit the airport yesterday?" My mother's sugary voice through the phone made my stomach turn. I stood frozen in the middle of Dallas International Airport, my packed bag alongside me as the truth slowly set in. They had deliberately lied about our flight date. My name is Jocelyn Adams, and I never believed my own parents would fall this low. I've been looking forward to this family vacation for months. Desperate, needing a break after an exhausting quarter at work as a marketing executive, I just finished hosting important clients from overseas. And I was supposed to be rewarded with this trip, an opportunity to unwind and spend more time with my family. "What are you saying?" Yesterday I managed to say, my voice shaking. "You told me the flight was today at 2 p.m. I have the text messages to prove it." As passengers hurried past me, the busy airport suddenly felt oppressive. Their eagerness for their own adventure simply serves to emphasize my increasing destruction. "Oh, honey, there must have been some miscommunication," my mother said, but I could hear the lie in her voice. "It was all right with your sister. We've all made ourselves at home at the resort. Of course my sister made it. Their golden kid, Amy, was always their top focus. I should have known something was off when they insisted on handling all the flight arrangements themselves, claiming it would be easier that way. Somehow, the same parents who depended on me to assist them with their expenditures didn't trust me enough to purchase my own ticket. "This wasn't a confusion, Mom," I said, my voice growing stronger. "Is astonishment replaced by anger? You deliberately gave me the wrong date. You never wanted me on this trip, did you?" The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, "Now stop being dramatic, Jocelyn. These things do occur." I ended the call. My hand is shaking all over me. Families embraced as they prepared for their own vacations while I stood alone, betrayed by the people who should have loved me most. I didn't miss the irony. I'd been sending the money every month for the past 2 years, helping them maintain their lifestyle after my dad's early retirement. They relied on my financial support for everything from medical bills to groceries, and still they chose to exclude me from our family vacation. Tears filled my eyes as I stared at my useless suitcase. But more than grief, I felt a scorching wrath growing inside me. This wasn't simply about a missing trip. It was about years of manipulation and favoritism and standing there in the airport. It was a choice I made that would alter everything. I've always questioned whether my parents ever really considered me to be their daughter or only their money account. Growing up, everything was about Amy. Her straight A's, her dancing performances, her perfect smile. I learned to live in her shadow, but I never stopped striving to win my parents' love and approval. I threw myself into my marketing career after college, working weekends and overtime to advance in the company, while Amy followed her aspirations to become an actress. Funded by our parents' retirement savings, I was actually creating something. Within 5 years, I had earned my position as the youngest executive at my business. handling important client accounts and a team of 15 individuals. My dad made the decision to retire early at that point because of his arthritis. Supporting Amy's unsuccessful acting career had depleted their funds, and now they were having financial difficulties. Without hesitation, I jumped in to aid. When unforeseen medical bills arose, I sent them $2,000 each month to cover their utilities and mortgage. I talked about the two. Last year alone, I sent them over $30,000 money I had planned to spend for a down payment on my own property. "We're very privileged to have such a wonderful daughter," my mom would say during our weekly chats. However, those calls always came to the same conclusion, with information on Amy's most recent audition or her updated headshots. Unless they wanted anything, they never inquired about my life or job. 2 months ago, when they proposed organizing a family trip to Hawaii, I was excited. Finally, an opportunity to spend quality time together. Dad had airline miles to spend, so they insisted on making all the arrangements. They stated nothing to worry about. Just keep your big client in mind. Meeting will take care of everything. Like an idiot, I believed them. I even deposited more funds into their account to assist with the cost of the resort. "It's the least I can do," I assured them, anticipating relaxing days on the beach and family meals, watching the sunset. I thought maybe this trip would be different, that they would finally see me as more than just their financial safety net. Rather, I found myself standing at a deserted airport, my heart broken and my luggage packed. My phone buzzed with a fresh message. A snapshot from Amy shows her and our parents at the beach, drinks in hand. "Family vacation begins," was the caption. "You are missed, sis. I wish you had been able to attend." The wrath that filled me in that instant was unlike anything I'd ever felt before. Something inside of me finally broke as I stood there at the airport looking at Amy's picture. I began going through my parents' old text messages, and the pattern quickly became apparent. Every discussion regarding the trip had been planned with the intention of making sure I wouldn't make it. The flight's at 2 p.m. on 15. My mom had texted. But checking at Amy's Instagram feed, I could see their boarding papers from yesterday 14 clear as day. They hadn't been wrong. They had meticulously prepared this deceit. My phone rang again. It was Jocelyn, my father, this time. He began by reprimanding me in a harsh tone, as if I were a child. "Your attitude has greatly irritated your mother. We made an honest error with the dates. And you're making a drama out of this. You have matured as a lady. You ought to comprehend. These things do occur." There was no humor in my laughter. A sincere error. "What made Amy aware of the accurate date? Why did you insist on making all of the reservations yourself? Why have you spent weeks deceiving me?" He started to say, "Now listen here." But I interrupted him. "No, Father. You pay attention. Last week, I looked at my bank statements. You received $3,000 from me for this trip. Was it also a mistake? Or did you simply accept my money with the knowledge that you would abandon me?" I learned all I needed to know from the stillness that ensued. Finally, taking a new technique, he said, "Jocelyn," in a gentler voice, "we have a fixed income, as you are aware. That money was necessary for the trip. You're doing so well in your career. Don't you understand that sacrifices must be made for family? I could hardly hold the phone because my hands were trembling so much. Make a sacrifice for your family. For years, I have been making sacrifices. I've sacrificed everything to help you and your mother, including my savings and my aspirations to purchase a home. And you pay me back like this? Stop being selfish," he yelled. "This trip was necessary for your sister. Because of her acting career, she has been under a lot of stress." I broke off, raising my voice. "You're referring to the pastime you've been supporting with my money while she lives in your home for free? While I put in 60-hour work weeks to support you all, the auditions never result in anything," he shouted. "Enough! I will not tolerate this disrespect. You've evolved. Jocelyn, you've become ruthless because of money." Something changed inside of me at that very instant. Although the pain persisted, it was now solidifying into resolve. One thing, Dad, you're correct. I have changed, and things are about to change even more. I ended the call and opened my banking app. It was time to close the Bank of Jocelyn permanently. The drive home from the airport was a blur of anger and determination. I documented everything during the evening. Screenshots of text communications, bank transactions, a complete spreadsheet of every dime I'd given them over the last 2 years. The total made me feel nauseous. $47,850. That's what my folks adore. It cost me. I went to my bank the following morning and closed the joint account I had created in order to send them money. I then made a call to the Human Resources Department of my workplace to have my parents removed off my life insurance policy's beneficiaries list. I felt lighter with every stride, like I was finally escaping unseen bonds. The texts began to pour in at that point. My mother's guilt trips came first. Knowing that you're angry with us keeps me up at night. This is tearing our family apart. How could you have such a cold heart? Amy then joined in. You're being so theatrical, my God. It was only a misunderstanding. You are the reason Mom cries every day. However, my father's speech was the one that truly exposed their true nature. This is not how we brought you up. This is how you pay us back for everything we've done for you. This week, your mom needs her prescription filled. You dare not neglect your obligations to this family. Astonished by their boldness, I glanced at my phone. My responsibility to the family. What about their need to show me the bare minimum of respect? Instead of reacting, I composed a clear, assertive email. Dear Amy, Dad, and Mom, I've been thinking a lot since yesterday. There was no misunderstanding in the Hawaii event. It was a conscious decision to keep my money while excluding me. This behavior pattern is now over. I am immediately discontinuing all financial assistance. The money I've donated was a choice, not an obligation. You'll need to find another way to cover your expenses. Never get in touch with me again regarding money. I need some distance and time to think about our relationship again. Regards. Within minutes, my phone exploded with calls and texts. My mother bemoaned in her voicemails that they would lose the house. Amy called me callous and self-centered in her irate communications. The threat level of my father's texts increased as he threatened to take action if I didn't wake up. I blocked them all that evening as I sat alone in my apartment. Doubt attempted to seep in. I had been conditioned for years to prioritize their needs and to think it was selfish of me to have boundaries. But then I recalled being at that airport and knowing that they had spent my money and planned and carried out their treachery. The following day at work, I got a surprise visitor. My father's sister, my Aunt Rose, entered my workplace. I heard the events. Sitting across from me, she said, I was requested to speak reason into you by your parents. Rose caught me off guard, but I expected more guilt trips. They acted cruelly. Jocelyn, for years I've seen them use your generosity. It's time someone told you the truth. This is not fair to you. Tears welled up in my eyes as she stretched across the desk and clasped my hand. I was finally noticed by a member of my family, actually noticed me. Rose warned that they would do all in their power to get you back in. Remain resilient. You're acting appropriately. I learned something 2 weeks after I sent the email that made the Hawaii event seem insignificant. During my lunch break, Rose contacted me, her voice tense with worry. I have something to show you, Jocelyn. After work, is it possible for you to visit my home? She had a pile of papers on her dining room table when I got there. Your father came to me last week asking for a loan. A few things that didn't add up were revealed by him. I thus conducted some research. What she showed me made my blood run cold. Bank records, loan applications, and credit card bills revealed a dismal image. My parents had been spending my money on more than simply necessities. They had been spending considerably more than they could afford, relying on my assistance to pay for their lavish way of living. Take a look at this. Rose gestured towards a statement from her credit card. 3 months ago, they obtained a new card in your name. Have you recently looked at your credit report? My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone and downloaded my credit report. A $15,000 credit card that I was unaware of was there. They had opened it using my personal information and social security number. Identity theft is that. Rose spoke softly. That's illegal, Jocelyn. I thought I was out of breath. How were they able to achieve this? There's more, Rose went on. Remember that tale about Amy's acting career? She isn't even in California to try out for roles. She's been living at home this whole time, working half-time at a neighborhood coffee shop. They said the funds were for her acting courses and headshots. They have been gambling with it. As the parts came together, the room whirled. The persistent plea for more money, the evasive justifications. When I asked enquiries, the guilt tripped. It went beyond simple manipulation of emotions. It was fraud. My mother texted me, and my phone chimed. We need to chat, please, my love. Because of all the stress your father is experiencing chest difficulties, you will be held accountable if something were to happen to him. I showed the note to Rose. She gave a head shake. Additional manipulation. Without your money, their house of cards is collapsing, and they are desperate. What should I do? Rose responded, You have 2 options. You can press charges for the identity theft, or you can handle this privately. In any case, you must defend yourself. Years of sacrifice and prioritizing their needs over mine came to mind, of accepting their falsehoods. The weeping, the guilt trips, the chest aches. They were playing a game. I want to have one final conversation with them. Face to face, I said, but you must accompany me there. Rose gave a nod. I'll arrange it. However, we must first get proof and place a credit freeze on you. They have shown their true selves to you. Jocelyn, have faith in them. I had trouble sleeping that night. I couldn't stop thinking about all the ambitions I had postponed in order to provide for children. The funds I should have had, the trips I never took, the house I wanted to purchase. They hadn't only stolen my money, they'd robbed years of my life. But while I laid there, I had another thought. I felt genuinely lucid for the first time in my adult life. The veil of manipulation was lifting, and in its stead came a steel-like resolution. They desired to engage in gaming. All right. However, I would set the rules this time. The encounter was arranged for Saturday afternoon at Rose's residence. I spent the morning discussing my options with a lawyer in relation to identity theft. I then created a folder containing all of the supporting documentation, including bank transactions, credit card bills, text messages, and more. I needed them to recognize that their game was done. Amy was with my parents when they got there. She didn't resemble the carefree girl in those pictures from Hawaii. She had a drawn face. I feel guilty. They filed into Rose's living room like students called to the principal's office. I appreciate you coming. With a firm voice, I started. I've found a few topics we should talk about. My mother interrupted. Jocelyn, tears are already beginning to fall. You have to know before you speak. No, I interrupted her. Now I'm speaking. I took out the statements from my credit cards. Is there anyone who could explain this? The hue vanished from my dad's face. Amy appeared perplexed, but my mother spoke up right away. It was an emergency. We intended to inform you of an emergency. I brought up more documents such as the credit card maxes and gambling debts, or perhaps Amy's fictitious acting career. Amy's head jerked upward. Fake, what do you mean? I turned to her. Do you truly have no idea? I've been informed that you're pursuing acting in California. All of my money allegedly went there. Rent, classes, and your headshots. What? Amy gave our parents a startled look. I have a job at Starbucks. I was informed that you declined to assist with my college expenses. Chaos ensued in the room. Amy broke down in tears. My mom made an effort to clarify, and my father stood up, his face red with anger. "Enough!" he yelled. "We took the necessary action. You're not understanding." "Oh, I understand well," I answered, bringing out my final piece of proof. "You stole someone else's identity. That's a federal felony. I have two possibilities here. File charges or deal with this in private. Your decision." My mother sank into histrionic sobbing. "You wouldn't wear your parents?" Rose interrupted. "Parents don't steal from their children. Parents are not deceitful, manipulative, or dishonest." My heart was shocked as my father suddenly gripped his chest. He gasped, "Call an ambulance." For a second, I almost fell for it. But then I saw my mother's face. Calculation, not panic. Their last play was this one. Their effort to take charge again? "No," I said firmly. "No more deceit. This is what will take place. A reimbursement agreement for each cent you stole will be signed by you. You're going to close that phony credit card and you're going to leave me alone. And if we refuse?" my dad inquired. Inexplicably, his heart attack was ignored. "After I file charges, you can tell a judge what you did." The ensuing hush was deafening. At last, my father gave a dejected nod. My mother gazed at the floor, her tears abruptly dry, and Amy gave me the impression that she was now seeing me clearly. My lawyer produced a payback arrangement, which they signed. I felt a profound, empty regret for the family I believed I had, but no sense of fulfillment. In the weeks that followed, my parents' meticulously crafted facade came crashing down. They were compelled to sell their home and move into a tiny flat without my financial assistance. According to the payback arrangement, they had to return me for the majority of their retirement income. It wasn't retaliation. Justice was served. Amy moved in with Rose temporarily while she planned out her future moves. She called me one evening, her voice small and uncertain. "I had no clue what they were doing," she replied. "They have been pitting us against one another for years." I apologize profusely, Jocelyn. Although her apology had some significance, it was insufficient to undo years of harm. It was a start, though. My parents tried to control me one last time. They caused a commotion in the lobby when they unexpectedly arrived at my office. My mother cried, "We're going to lose everything, after everything we've given for you." In the midst of worried co-workers, I held my ground. "I was lost by you." "Calmly," I said. "The only thing that counts is that. And you had a choice." They were led out by security, and I felt at peace as I watched them go. I was free of the guilt that had plagued me for years. Their victim, their emotional punching bag, and their ATM were all gone. That night, I finalized the reservation and made a vacation to Hawaii just for me. The irony made me grin. They had given me something invaluable in exchange for their attempt to keep me out of a family vacation: liberty. I saw the sunset paint the sky in vivid oranges and pinks when standing on a beach in Maui 3 months later. This was just what I needed, even though it wasn't the family vacation I had envisioned. My phone, peaceful without the constant barrage of guilt-tripping messages, buzzed with a text from Rose. "They're finally moving out of the house this weekend," she wrote. "Amy is a community college student. When you get back, she wants to get coffee with you." I responded after taking a deep breath of salt air. "Tell her I'm open to it." Slowly but surely, the repayment plan was taking shape. The majority of my parents' belongings had been sold, and they consistently sent me a check each month. Not because they were sorry, but because they had no choice. The fraud accusations I'd kept back would arise if they missed a single payment. My mother still attempted sending emotional emails on multiple accounts. "While you live in luxury, we eat ramen noodles. Was this what you were hoping for?" Without replying, I erased them. Their guilt trips had lost their effect over me at work. I'd received another promotion. The energy I used to spend controlling my parents' disarray now poured into constructing my own life. I'd even begun looking for houses, a desire I'd put on hold for years while paying their lifestyle. Standing there on the shore, I finally understood. Forgiveness and reconciliation are not always necessary for the happiest outcomes. Sometimes they're about stepping away and selecting yourself. I was set free by my parents, who had orchestrated this Hawaii trip to harm me.